First things first, sorry about the wind noise. Second off, because apparently owners of BMW M6s are really bad at making YouTube videos, I am now the internet's leading source for information on this car. With that being said, it now feels like it is a bit of my obligation to tell you everything that is wrong with the car now that it's crossing 80,000 miles. I'm gonna walk around the entire car, tell you absolutely every single thing that is wrong with this car, as well as all the money that I've poured up to it up to this point in my 8 months and 10,000 miles of ownership. So finally, someone is here to actually tell you what it costs to own one of these things instead of spitting a bunch of propaganda at you telling you you can't afford it. So let's break down the real numbers and find out just how expensive owning an M6 really is. If you're watching this video about a F06 M6, I can pretty much guarantee you that your first concern is going to be the health of this engine. Well, I'm happy to report that the engine is actually giving me no problems whatsoever. I get my oil sampled and tested at every single oil change. I've done 3 oil changes up to this point, and Blackstone Laboratories has indicated that there are no metal shavings detected in my oil whatsoever. Nothing to be concerned with. I am good to go. However, the second most important part of the power plant is the transmission, and that is giving me some problems. Now, before I jump into this, I would like to clarify that this car is full bolt-on stage 2, whatever the hell that means. The person who sold me the vehicle said that it makes somewhere around 800 horsepower. I've never had it dynoed. I have no idea how much power it makes. All I know is that it's modified, and it's certainly a bit faster than stock. With that being said, my OEM clutch is starting to go out, and originally I thought it was the entire transmission because it skips 5th gear completely once the drivetrain malfunction error pops up on my screen. Now, this is a bit of an interesting issue to tackle because replacing the entire transmission is actually quite a bit cheaper than getting an upgraded clutch that can handle up to 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. In fact, if you see this on screen, a used transmission for a 10th generation Honda Civic and a dual clutch for an F06 M6 are almost the exact same price. However, a clutch for this car that's going to be better suited to the modifications that are on it is going to run about $2,500 plus $1,000 worth of labor, so my current transmission problem is about a $3,500 issue. Now, I know I mentioned before that the drivetrain malfunction does pop up because of this transmission issue, but it also triggers a check engine light somehow. I've had the codes read multiple times. There's nothing else mechanically going wrong with the car, but for whatever reason, the transmission being out of whack gives me a check engine light for the time being. Now let's move on to the second most expensive issue that this car is currently having, which is actually just a cosmetic issue. If you guys have followed a bunch of people who have had BMW M cars with carbon fiber roofs, you'll know that they're relatively sensitive to being out in the sun, and my roof is unfortunately no different. You can see here that it's peeling pretty bad. It's not completely destroyed, but obviously it's quite an eyesore. The cheapest quote that I've seen to address this sort of issue is about $2,000, and that's essentially them sanding down the entire roof, adding a new layer of clear on top of it so it looks just as good as it did the day it was new. Furthermore, getting this fixed would also get some of the yellow out of the carbon fiber roof that's kind of also a little bit ugly, so that's an upgrade that I'm really looking forward to do. It's just not a super big priority for me at the moment. Let's move on to the next issue the car is having, which is more of a regular maintenance item, but my front tires are bald. I already cooked through a set of rears, surprise, surprise. Thankfully, I was able to actually get a deal on some Bridgestone Potenza S007 full summer performance tires, and I was able to get 2 for around 750 bucks. Unfortunately, the same discount is not available for the tires that I'm gonna have to run in front, so replacing the front tires is gonna be about $1,000. Sticking with the front half of the cars, I've probably got about 5,000 to 10,000 miles left in the front brake pads. That whole situation is probably going to run me about another $1,000. If the rotors have to get replaced as well, realistically, you're probably looking at about $2,500 to replace the front brakes on an M6 that doesn't have carbon ceramics. If you do have carbon ceramics, RIP, buddy. Those brakes are $17,000 before labor. So pro tip, if you're shopping for an M6, don't buy one with carbon ceramics. The next issue that I want to touch on is also a cosmetic issue, and it's really not that expensive to fix, and I'm sure you've already noticed it. My headliner is sagging. Now, I have a couple theories as to how this happened. One, I have a radar detector installed into my mirror, and the wires run through the roof all the way to the back. At least that's what I'm guessing. So there's definitely a possibility that whoever installed the radar detector maybe just didn't stick the headliner on all the way. The other theory is that this car did spend about a year and a half in Florida, and I don't know if you know this, but adhesive and humidity don't really mix all that well together. If you've known any car guys in Florida, this is definitely not the first car this has happened to. But I don't know if being only there for a year and a half did enough damage to make the headliner sag this bad. Regardless, I've gotten a few quotes on getting it fixed. It looks like it's going to range somewhere between $250 and $500 to get the headliner all perfectly fixed up. Let's just hope I don't have to order a whole new headliner from BMW, because I'm sure that is not cheap if you can even buy it at all. The next issue I want to touch on is that I did in fact break some of the speakers on the Bang & Olufsen sound system. Now, I want to preface this by saying I absolutely blast this thing. I'm almost always at full volume, and quite honestly, I hit full volume for about 30 seconds the day I bought this car home, and the subwoofer in the driver door almost immediately popped. If you talk to anybody that knows how to properly take care of audio systems, they will tell you that playing it at full volume is definitely not a good idea. I did it anyway, so that subwoofer is broken, and then this tweeter over here has got a little crackliness going on, so I'm going to get that one replaced as well. All in all, with parts and labor, replacing the subwoofer and the tweeter, including labor like I just said, is $560. Not a super expensive fix, but again, it's not much of a priority, so it's kind of something I'm putting on the back burner until I can deal with the large issue like the clutch. So overall, 10,000 hard miles later, this thing is actually holding up significantly better than I thought it would. I was certainly expecting to have some metal shavings in the oil by now, maybe some damage to the diff, possibly damage to the axle. For those that don't know, the diff and the rear axle on this car are sensitive points. If you're someone like me who frequently likes to lose traction, doing so from low mile an hour can cause intense stress on both the axle and the diff. You can crack your diff open if you're doing too many burnouts and launches, and you could do the same thing to your axle by doing the exact same type of behavior. However, if you're somebody who's got some large pockets and you're able to set your car up the right way right as you buy it, you can actually prevent these sorts of issues from happening by buying some aftermarket parts. Axles that are strong enough for about 1,200 foot-pounds of torque run about $1,200 to $1,500 before labor. A diff brace that'll help keep the diff from splitting open when you're doing launches and burnouts is about $1,600. As we discussed before, if you're worried about the stock clutch going out, an upgraded clutch will run you about $2,500. And circling back to what everybody is actually afraid of, if you want to build the engine up so that you don't have to worry about it exploding, realistically you're going to want to swap out the rod bearings as well as the rods, and both of those items with labor put together probably going to run you about $4,000. So without getting all specific with the math, if I was to fix every single issue that this car has and perform all the upgrades that would make this thing completely bulletproof in the reliability department, even with me driving like a lunatic, it would cost somewhere in the range of about $15,000. I mentioned before in a previous video that I overpaid for this car, and I did. It had 70,000 miles on it, and I paid $45,000, which if you look at the M6 market, especially now, is way over what M6s at that mileage are selling for now. I just really liked the brown roof. I had to have it. With that being said, if you take my overpriced purchase price of the car and combine that with the amount of money that it would cost to make this thing basically as good as new, if not even better, you're looking at about $60,000 to $65,000 all in, which I understand sounds like a lot of money, but you got to put things in context here. An okay spec'd G80 M3 is $105,000. A decently spec'd B58 Supra is $60,000. Same is to be said for an M340i. And now I get all of those cars are new, probably going to come with warranties, blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, the M6 has been out for so long now that everybody knows their common issues, and there are fixes for every single one of them. So if you're in a position to buy a Supra, a G80 M3, or even just an M340i, you pretty realistically could get yourself an M6, take care of it, and not have any problems with it. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, servicing this thing is a hefty price. Oil change, brakes, and a warranted part replacement was a $2,500 ordeal. As I mentioned before, the rear tires and the front tires are about $1,000 a piece, so if you want 4 new tires, that is going to cost you about $2,000. Listen, I'm not here to sit here and tell you that these cars aren't expensive to own. But what I am trying to combat is some other YouTubers out there that have made videos on chassis like this, Savage Geese, that really spend the entire time fear-mongering people that may like these cars, convincing them that they're unownable, unreliable, and ultimately just a nightmare to keep in your garage. I'm telling you as somebody who is 25, has 2 other cars, and really isn't balling that hard, that if you really want to buy one of these, it's definitely obtainable. To put straight numbers to it, if right now you're in the market for another car and you can push your budget somewhere around $55,000 to $65,000, you could easily afford an M6 in the $30,000 to $40,000 price range, keep up with all of the maintenance, and have one of the coolest cars ever made for less than 50 grand. Will service be expensive? Of course, but what car with a V8 and 2 turbos is not going to be expensive to service? I'll take it one step further. What car is going to offer you this kind of experience, again, for that same price point? To close things off, ultimately, if you're shopping for one of these things, be careful, do your research, understand what you're getting into. But I just want to be, apparently, the only person on YouTube that is telling people, yes, an M6 is obtainable. It is not a nightmare to own one of these cars. If you really, really want one, go get it. It's not going to be the end of the world. You're not going to drive down the street and have your engine blow up. All of these people that owned 5 Series 16 and a half years ago that are all over the forums telling you how unreliable these cars are have no idea what they're talking about. Furthermore, a lot of the BMW mechanics that like to come out and talk about these cars, you also have to realize that most of them were servicing these cars when they were relatively new, being sold to lease clients who literally do not care about taking care of their car because it's not their car. And listen, I realize I'm one guy with one M6 having one specific experience owning one of these cars. But I am not nice to this thing at all. I'm doing 2-3 burnouts every single time I drive this thing. I'm regularly smacking rev limiter. And as mentioned in the speaker section of this video, I am absolutely pushing all however many speakers are in this car to their absolute limits basically anytime I listen to music. For those of you that have known me for most of my lives, you'll know that I am notoriously bad at taking care of my things. And yet somehow I have gotten 10,000 miles from 70 to 80,000 miles on this car, really with no major issues outside of things related to the fact that this car makes way more power than it's supposed to. So again, do your research, buy within your own purchasing limits, all that jazz. So, in closing, is the BMW M6 expensive to own? Absolutely it is. Is it unobtainably expensive? Not even a little bit close. So thank you guys for watching, and huge thank you to Savage Geese and other YouTubers just like him that spread nonsense all over the internet and give me a lane to make videos that people appreciate. Take care of your cars, drive hard, and I'll see you in the next video.